Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Donna Serdula. Donna is the founder and president of Vision Board Media, a professional branding company that helps individuals and companies tell their unique stories on LinkedIn and beyond, bringing dynamic brand storytelling to the masses and empowering people to dream big. That's the ink in her pen. It's her website, linkedin-makeover.com, where she and her team of over 20 writers and coaches help people collide with opportunity and transform their lives via future-forward career branding. She has authored 2 editions of LinkedIn Profile Optimization for Dummies. She's shared her LinkedIn expertise at global conferences, presented keynotes and workshops, and featured on a number of high-profile news outlets. Please join me in welcoming Donna Serdula. Hi, Donna.
Hey, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you. I think your expertise in LinkedIn is so desperately needed out there. But we're going to begin at the beginning. As you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to talk about those formative years first. So take us back to those early years and how they may or may not have informed where you are today.
Yeah, I look at the things that I do today, helping people with their career branding, helping them brand their employees, really taking control of their careers, so they can really, elevate and accelerate in their careers. And I talk to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Constantly talking, understanding who they are, what they're doing, trying to add value. But, I'm also always training and teaching people. That to me has always been the real basis of my company. It's really helping to educate and inspire. And so with that knowledge, my father was in sales and my mother was a teacher.
Ah,
and
okay.
I feel that having, witnessed them, through my, younger years.
Sure.
I see a little bit of both of them in the work I do today. You couple that with the fact that I was very, very shy, painfully shy.
Really? Okay.
And to some extent, I still am.
Really?
But that shyness is what really propelled me to get onto stage and, to teach and to present and to speak. The early years, I do feel very strongly, have contributed and have led me to where I am today.
Wow. What great influences, and then also though, to recognize how those have served you in terms of where you are today. So take us forward from those earlier years, the shy Donna who's now on the stage. But how did you get from there to where you are now? What did some of those developmental years look like? And because as I said to you before we turned on the record button, I said you didn't just graduate high school and become president of Vision Board Media. What did you do?
That was a journey.
Yeah, right. I think people would love to hear about the journey because I'm sure there are people listening who probably could relate to having 2, working parents who provided, were good role models, and yet maybe can relate to having been a shy kid and wanting to kind of break through some of that. And so take us back there a little bit.
So, for me, I think one of the most important, experiences that I had is that I went to a woman's Catholic college. I went to Rosemont College. Now it's co-ed, but back in the 90s, it was a woman's college.
Uh-huh.
And that truly did help me as well, because going there, it made a difference in my education, and allowed me to focus, completely on myself and my studies. And that was powerful. And very sadly, there's very few women colleges out there today. So many of them have gone co-ed, which I think is such a shame, because I do think there still is a need for them. But so much of what I was doing in college, again, prepared me. I had no idea, really. It's so funny. You don't really know what you want to do,
Right.
when you have only, some limited experiences.
Right.
And clearly, the experiences that I had infused what I do now, my mother and my father. But I had wanted to get into film.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I wanted to be behind the scenes. I wanted to be, in the development and production. And I worked on M. Night Shyamalan's very first movie. Well, actually, second movie. It was his first studio film. And I was an intern on that. And that gave me, a lot of insight into how, things work and what that was like. And I really thought, after I graduated from college, I thought that might be where I wanted to go. And I attempted it, but it was hard. It was not an easy type of industry to break into.
No, not at all.
And my father said, well, why don't you come and work for me? So good old nepotism, which I don't think is a bad thing. I really don't.
No,
I mean, sometimes it is, clearly sometimes it is, but, I think we have to recognize that, for young people who are coming in to their careers, it's a great, handout to say, hey, come in and let me mentor you. Let me help you. Let me get you started. Let me get you that footing that you need.
I think actually, it can work out very well for a lot of people, even if they don't stay in that, line of work. It sometimes is exactly sort of that next best step. What kind of, you said your dad was in sales. What kind of was it his own business?
No, he was a rep. He was
a rep. Okay.
Rep. So he did in fact work for himself, but he repped for a company.
I see.
And so he was paid 100% commission.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Yeah. So I worked with him in his sales office for a few years. And, I was sort of like an account manager at that point. I was doing a lot of training, again, finding myself constantly getting pushed, in front of audiences.
Yeah.
And liking that challenge because it made me grow. It forced me into areas that were uncomfortable for me.
What kind of industry was that?
Yeah, it was the company was called, that we rep for, was CCC, Information Services. And they sold estimating software to body shops. And their claim to fame was a total loss, and understanding that a total loss of a car changes depending on the season and the location of it.
Oh, wow.
And they were the ones that brought in computerized estimating. So back in the day, you'd go to a body shop and you'd have to handwrite an estimate. Or, the body shop guy would handwrite the estimate. They brought, a standardization to it. And so they made great friends with the insurance companies.
I bet.
You can now see how that all sort of came together. And so I was working with insurance companies. I was working with body shops. We were selling the software. My father and I started to sell the computers that ran the software.
Oh, really?
These body shops had no idea. You couldn't just walk down the street and buy a computer back in those days.
Right.
It was a totally different world. And I remember when it went from 1998 to 1999, they decided to take their software from DOS to Windows. And so I'm going from door to door, teaching these guys, teaching insurance agents, teaching body shops how to use a mouse.
Oh my goodness. What a riot. But it's interesting just to hear about this part of your early career, because for those of us who remember those days, but even for those of us who don't, when you think about even dealing with software and hardware, right? Most people would never dream of having both of those being part of even the same business. They're just handled so separately now. So and to think about all the different moving parts, no pun intended, but all the different parts that you were dealing with in terms of the probably all these mom and pop, body shops,
And for me, I came
and
from
the
a woman.
insurance industry. I mean,
Yeah.
just so many different players
But I came from a
involved.
women's college into
Yeah.
this very male-dominated
Yeah, I mean,
industry.
really interesting.
But for me, when I was in college, I was on the BBS. I remember getting my first modem, on my computer. So like even back then, I was into social media, and it wasn't called social media back then.
BBS. Tell us what BBS
The bulletin board systems, the old bulletin.
Oh, I don't.
So at any rate, I then am now working directly for the company that my father repped for, and they put me in charge of CRM.
Oh, well, I know what CRM is.
Management. And we developed in-house a CRM for our sales reps. And so that started, right? Understanding how, my father had a shoebox
database type of thing, right?
But my father had a shoebox full of index cards with all of his clients. And I remember taking that and then purchasing just at a store, a software called Tracker. And it was our first movement from the shoebox to a computerized database. And then working directly for CCC, I then started to create, a true, much more, streamlined and robust CRM. But again, it was the same concept of each person has that card and you add information to it. Right.
Wow.
But what's the real big issue with those CRMs is if you're not actively updating it, those cards go bad real easy.
Right.
It's so easy to lose track because the email's wrong, the fax number's wrong, the person changed, changed names, whatever it could be. So, that was very much in my mind because it was something that I was doing day in and day out. Then fast forward.
Yeah.
Still the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And I get onto dating apps. Single gal, getting onto a dating app. I find myself on, Match.com and eHarmony. There were, a whole bunch of things like that. And I'm seeing something here, how these dating sites, everyone has a profile very much like a CRM, right? But these profiles for these men are atrocious. The pictures are bad. The stories are worse. And I remember thinking to myself, they can choose to define and describe themselves for a potential mate in any way, and this is how they choose. And I remember thinking, this is terrible. Terrible. Like, why can't they tell a better story?
Yeah. Oh,
now,
cool.
2002, 2003, LinkedIn comes into play. And all of this starts to come together for me, Tammy. I've got my CRM knowledge, right? I also am looking at, at that time I'd looked at all those dating websites and you know what? LinkedIn didn't seem much different. It was definitely a CRM. There was a little bit of a dating website because there's this profile.
Right.
And once again, no one was doing a very good job of telling their story. And now I change my career. I went from CCC. I had decided, you know what? I want to follow in my father's footsteps. I want to get into direct sales.
Interesting.
I want to stop being that sales analyst. I want to stop doing the CRM. I want to stop, working within corporate and managing departments and solving problems. Instead, I want to go out there and I want to really learn the game of sales. My father had taught me quite a bit, but now I wanted to do it. And suddenly I find myself in New York City. I'm tasked with developing a territory. There was no book of business. It was totally new. They put me, I was working in New York City, but I was building the Philadelphia territory for this company called Microdesk. They were an Autodesk. I'm calling into architects and engineers. And what do I start to realize? Every time I make a cold call, I'm pulling up the person's name to see who it is that I'm going to be talking to. And what's the only pertinent result within Google? Their LinkedIn profile. Now here I am judging this person that I'm going to be talking to based off this dull, out of date, looks like a copy and paste of an out of date resume. And that's when I had my epiphany, because I thought, wait, how am I projecting myself? How am I presenting myself? How am I choosing to showcase myself? And I looked at my profile, and it wasn't any different. That was my first epiphany. But I just took you through all these different things that allowed me to recognize this super early on. Earlier than I would say earlier than even LinkedIn. They had no clue what they were dealing with, because back in the day and for years, they said it's your online resume, but it's not. It's not your online resume. Your resume is your resume. This is your calling card. This is your first impression.
I completely,
your manifesto.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree with you. And this is so I just want to put a pin in something here for a moment, though, because I'm thinking, this also says something about who you are, Donna, or at least because I've known you for so long now. But
on 45 minutes.
I know. But this actually puts really a pin in what I think is important about LinkedIn. I know we're going to get into what you think is important about LinkedIn, but I totally agree with you. It's not just an online resume. It really is the best opportunity that professionals have to give people. I think it does more than this. I'll say that right now. But it gives people a chance to see who you are, not just what you do, right? And what I'm also reflecting on is all that experience you had up till that point. You could have gone in a number of different directions, depending on who you are, Donna, right? You could have said, I want to become like a techno geek, right? And gone back to school. Maybe you did do some other training along the way to understand like different computer languages, or get into, the ins and outs of databases and things like that. I would imagine you needed some of that to help develop some of these things. But some people would have gone like heavy duty into, information technology from what you're describing, right? You went let's say the other side of the brain, and you started thinking about things like, you started thinking more about like, well, these dating sites and then this LinkedIn, and how are people telling their story? How are people showing up? How are people being who they are, right? And not just what do you do? Because what do you do? That's kind of like, that's boilerplate stuff, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. For me, I'm now working in a cutthroat, high-pressured sales environment. I'm making tons of cold calls. I'm doing everything that I can to build my book of business. And I was selling. I was a reseller, which meant I was selling the exact same software as my competitors. And that's when I had another epiphany, which was, wait, if I'm selling the exact same thing as my competitor, what's the differentiation? The differentiation became me. People wanted to do business with me because they liked me, that they realized that I had their back, that I understood their industry, that I understood what was going on, and I was there to help them, that it wasn't transactional. Right. That was an important piece for me, because I started to realize the importance of networking and having these connections and these contacts. So all of this is coming together for me. I'm using LinkedIn every day, using it to get past the gatekeeper. I'm using it to help my own brand. I'm doing all of these things. And 2009 rolls around. I have just closed. Oh my goodness, it's just like a week into December, and I've closed over $1 million in business for that month. I've got a check for $50,000 in my briefcase. And my sales manager comes in and says, yeah, you did a really good job the last 3 years. We're going to take over from here. We don't need you. Oh, punch in the face.
Whoa.
That was shattering. And, I'm thinking to myself, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And I always wanted to have a business. Always wanted to have a business. But I never really truly knew what my power was. Like, I always used to think, I wish I had some marketable skills. I wish I had some marketable skills. And, I went back to my college, Rosemont College. They were having this day of, helping people embrace, a business entrepreneurial mindset. And I walked into my very first class, and the woman looked at me, the instructor, and she just pointed at me and she said, "What do you love? What is your passion?" And I said, "I love to help people embrace technology." And she said, "That's what you need to do." And at that moment, I thought everyone can design websites and understand how technology works and how to build I thought everyone got it. But that's when I realized they didn't. And so it was at that point I decided to start my business. And at the time, I was thinking very small. I called it Donna Tech Designs because it was just me.
Mm-hmm.
I was designing websites. I was helping people with social media, and I was writing LinkedIn profiles. But that LinkedIn profile part of the business was what really invigorated me. It's what was really what I loved, and no one else was doing it. And I started to do it because I had always wanted someone to help me tell my story, because you can't write about yourself unless you are an extreme narcissist.
I agree totally.
So I wanted someone to help me. And I thought, well, you know what? If I want someone to help me, everyone else wants help. So let me start doing this. And I grabbed the domain name, LinkedIn-makeover.com, put out a website, designed it myself. And I sat back, and it's probably about 3 months later. Now, I didn't sit back. Let me just say that. I say that.
It doesn't sound like you did.
I was blogging every day. I was speaking in front of Rotaries. I was whatever I needed to do. I was out there trying to teach people how to use LinkedIn and why it was important and why their brand mattered and how to take control of it. And as I was doing this, it took 3 months before I got my very first sale. And I remember when my first sale came in, I had no idea. I got an email. I think it was from PayPal, and it said $99 has been deposited into your account. And I was like, wow, what is this? And then it dawned on me, that was my first client. Someone found my website and paid me $99. Now, I will tell you that $99, that exact same service I now sell for about, well over $1,000.
Uh-huh. I'm sure it's well worth it.
Big difference in price. And I actually have found far more success over 1,000 than I ever did under 100.
Yeah.
Because people know what, they place value.
Yeah.
They're going to get out of it. It was then in 2012, I brought on my first 2 writers. They're still with me today.
Wow.
20 writers. We helped over 8,000 executives and entrepreneurs and professionals.
Wow.
I was contacted by the For Dummies people. It was always a dream of mine, was to write a For Dummies book, because I always loved it. I talked about DOS in the early days. I had my DOS for Dummies book. I had that DOS shell page.
Love it. I love it.
Earmarked. And when they reached out to me, they wanted me to write LinkedIn optimization for dummies, and I couldn't say yes fast enough.
And so now you've done 2 editions of the same book. Is that right? You've updated it?
We updated it right around the pandemic was when we went back and we revised it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you see the one with the chess pieces, that's the second edition. That's the most recent.
That's important.
And it's still very much up to date. It still is. It's been out there now a couple of years, but I've got to tell you, the way we wrote it and the methodology, it's still right there. It's right where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. And so I would imagine there may even be a 3rd edition coming out at some point, because it just seems like LinkedIn is there's always a change, right? With LinkedIn, there's always changes, and people are always trying to stay on top of the algorithm and all of that. What are your thoughts on that? It seems like I know I'm asking you 3 questions in one sentence, but it does seem like the way that you've kind of almost instinctively moved through this part of your career where you noticed a need, or you said, what's missing here? Mm-hmm. And then you started to figure out how to fill it in, or what is it that people are needing, or what's the story that's not being told here that needs to be told? And then kind of trying to figure out what is that story, and moving forward through that, right? With a lot of fortitude, but also patience. I get the feeling there's a nice balance there in terms of how you've done that. And the fact that you started off with these 2 writers over 10 years ago, and they're still with you, that speaks volumes. I
think the thing that was the most eye-opening was when I started, it really was, we were writing LinkedIn profiles. That was it. Talk about we're writing a LinkedIn profile, but it took me time to realize we were doing so much more than that. Mm-hmm. We were really helping people understand their value and their story. We were helping people understand what they bring to the table. Right? And working with these executives and these entrepreneurs and these professionals from all over the world. Our clients are everywhere. They're not local, not necessarily local to me, but they're local to the globe. And they needed help. They needed someone to talk to tell, this is who I am. This is what I've been doing. They needed someone to help them articulate this in a manner that was impressive and interesting and intriguing. Yeah. And it was all there. It's all there inside of them, but it's so hard to see it when you sit so close. Once we would update their profile, once we worked on their resumes and their bios, and we were really helping them with all of their career branding, their lives were changing.
Oh, absolutely.
And that to me was what was the most beautiful thing. And I think that's what keeps me moving forward every day is knowing that when you define who you want to be and you set that goal, that vision for your career, and you're prepared for opportunities, suddenly you start to collide with them. Suddenly you start to see yourself moving forward, almost in an accelerated type of manner. Yeah. And you're making more, and you're enjoying life more, and you just keep up leveling. Yeah. Yeah. And I would imagine too that there are people who over the years have come back for a tune-up or kind of an update. Over again. Yeah. Yeah. As they further develop what they're doing and as they see themselves moving forward, they need that further clarity or definition in their branding, right? Absolutely. And that's the thing that I love is, I talked about how I called the company Donna Tech Designs. It became Vision Board Media. And to me, Vision Board Media, it's a future cast, right? It's a way of saying, this is the future that I want to be. This is
Right.
where I want to go. But it's also a board of directors. You need a team to surround you and help you.
Mm.
You need that
So,
network.
yes, you're preaching to the choir here for sure. I mean, everything that you're speaking to here is exactly the kind of thing that I encourage my clients to be doing and looking for when they are trying to figure out who they are, not just what they do, right? And that sounds like that's exactly what you're zeroing in on. So is it correct to assume that you're not doing websites per se anymore, or do you have people on your team who help people with those kinds of things?
We can do personal websites. We can do small websites. We're not doing huge,
right?
Huge major websites, but we definitely can do that. We do a lot of one sheets. We do career walking decks, bios. We help people with articles. We helped one client get into the London Times.
Oh, that's cool.
With his article.
Wow.
So it's to me, we often think of branding for a product or for a company.
Yeah.
But where we focus is branding for the individual or branding for the employee, because that's the other piece is, when you look at your company, you might know, of course you've put time and money into your brand because you're that figurehead, you're the leader.
Right.
But your clients are doing business with your employees, right? They're working and do your employees look like they're looking?
Right.
Are they telling this the right story?
Right.
And so oftentimes we'll go into companies and really help and make sure that their profiles are configured and optimized. So it's a balance of their own unique brand, but combined with the company brand and optimized for not for recruiters, but optimized for prospects, and partnerships, and PR opportunities.
Wonderful. And the other thing about LinkedIn that I find a lot of people miss is, I think a lot of people think of, LinkedIn's a networking site, or as we talked about earlier, it's just a digital resume, right? And we talked earlier that no, it's so much more. I think it's also an amazing opportunity for getting lots of information about other companies, company cultures, learning about people who work in various companies. If you
business intelligence.
Right. Thank you for capturing that for me. And so I think people don't think of LinkedIn as that kind of a resource.
And I agree. I agree completely. I think there's still so many people who say, I'll get on it when I'm looking. When I'm looking for my position, then I'll get on it.
Right.
But I want you to dig your well before you're thirsty. Right?
There you go. I love
important.
That. Yeah.
But at the same time, for those who are out there, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. Right? So, it's never too late to start to think, okay, what is my brand? What is my story? How can I start to network? How can I do this in an efficient, effective way? Because I think a lot of times people think of LinkedIn and it's, oh my gosh, I'm running a business, or I have my career and my family. I don't want to be on it all the time.
Right.
You don't have to be.
If you know how to use it, right?
It's very, very manageable. You can be very balanced in your usage of it. And yes, there's an element of the branding, right? There's the element of how are you presenting yourself? Then there's the element of how are you showing up on the platform?
Right.
The nice thing with LinkedIn is it's quality over quantity, which sometimes scares people because when we start to think quality, I've got to create masterpieces.
Right.
And that can become intimidating.
Right.
But at the same time, it's one of those things. Post once a week. Start out there. See if you can post once a week. See if you can comment on 3 posts. And just start to engage slowly.
Yeah.
And start to see what happens. And what you will find is the more active you get, the more opportunities, the more value, the more inspiration, the more motivation, the more friendship, the more just good things start to happen to you.
Yeah.
Which then makes you want to do it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great advice that, you have to dip a toe in the water, then go up into your ankles, get used to the water, right? Because I do think a lot of people are, they're reluctant to do that. They feel exposed, or, I think it's that general sort of reluctance about networking that people have.
I'd go a little further. In fact,
Yeah.
I would say that this is your career. This is your career, and your colleagues and your employer, your boss is on and watching, and you don't want to mess up. You don't want to mess up. That's a scary, scary thought.
Yeah.
You don't want to open your mouth and put your foot in there.
Right.
So for a lot of people, the easiest road is to do nothing at all.
Right.
And that's what most people do. They're like, you know what? Rather than mess up, rather than risk,
right,
I'm just gonna sit here silently. I will lurk. I will look. I will watch, but I'm not going to put, go forward. But here's the thing: you have to make that risk, but you also have to recognize, one, this is your career, this is your industry, this is your specialty. You have something to say.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn is one of the kindest networks out there.
Oh, excellent point. I'm so glad you said that. Hopefully that will put some people over the edge. Right. It's not any of the other. You are so right. I'm glad you said that. I'd never thought of it quite that way, but yet you're right. It is that people don't get snarky on LinkedIn. I haven't seen any of that. Yeah. Yeah. They're professional. I like that. What else should people know about you and your business and what you have to offer your clients?
I think for me, it's all about, talking to people, understanding their needs, providing them with solutions that make sense. It's, always acting transparently. It's always putting customer service first. It's recognizing that, it's not, you don't want to work with just one writer, who's good at just, a couple, but it's really finding the right experts. And we handpick, the resume writer, we handpick a profile writer. We handpicked, we're always trying to make the best connections, the right connections. And we have so many writers that we can do that. We can do that.
You have a big team, actually.
Yeah. So it's, to me, I think that's an important thing. But, so often, with my website, and I've done this from the very beginning, is, I believe in giving as much as I can for free. And so you visit LinkedInMakeover.com and you click on free resources. I just, over the summer, I added an assessment, a personal branding, a career branding assessment.
Nice.
Tammy, you'll have to check it out.
I'm definitely going to check it out.
But it asks a slew of questions, not too many, but I think about 15 questions.
That's great.
And then it generates a report that really summarizes and says, this is where you are in your career and your branding, and the things that you need to do to really think about it and get better.
This is, and this is, Donna, this is what people are hungry for. People are hungry for this kind of clarity. And I totally agree with you. People cannot do this for themselves. And yet there are a lot of people out there who still think they can. And then they struggle with it, and they don't always access the knowledge and the resources that are available to them outside of themselves to do that. And I think part of it is, you're not supposed to ask for help, right? And yet,
I also think people don't even realize that help is available.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of it too. And so hopefully we will make sure that people realize help is available.
And then do you know what we will stop? We will stop the procrastinating.
Procrastinating. I love it.
I can't tell you how many times clients have said to me, Donna, I have cleaned out my garage. I have cleaned my attic. I have scrubbed floors, all because I did not want to sit down and write my resume, write my profile, think about any of this stuff.
I love it. Oh, that's great. I have a lot of things that are going to get quoted out of this conversation, either on for the episode or elsewhere. So, Donna, you've already directed us to the website for your business's website. Is there anywhere else that you would tell people to go to best access you and your services?
I think visit my profile on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like follow. I'd love to.
Yeah.
And I do pay for LinkedIn, so I've got open profile, so anyone can message me on LinkedIn via my profile.
Wonderful. Okay. And one final question before we wrap up. And I feel like you already answered this in a number of different ways, but we're here. Why not get one more bit of wisdom from Donna? A lot of people listening to this podcast really are grappling with what's next and how to even think about what's next and start to take some steps to get there. What would be a key piece of advice that you would give someone who is considering their next steps in their career?
I would suggest start by taking a first step. You don't have to know exactly where you're going to end up. Even if you just know a direction of the things that you like,
yeah,
you start to take, because a lot of times we're paralyzed with this idea that you have to know exactly where you're headed, or you have to be perfect in your very next step. And it really does. It stops any progress at all. And oftentimes, the more you start moving, even if you're hesitant, even if you're not 100% sure, but you just take some of those first steps, that will help you. And things will start to get clearer the closer you get. The other thing I would say is this, and that is you have to be prepared. You need to be prepared for any opportunity.
Yes.
So often people say, there's no opportunities out there.
Oh.
I'm like, well, let's just say you were presented with the best opportunity. Would you be able to immediately jump on it? And the answer is almost invariably no. So make sure your profile's optimized. Make sure your resume is up to date. Make sure that you've got a suit that fits and is clean and is hanging. You've got a dress. You've got whatever it is.
Whatever it is. Right.
Prepared.
Right.
We were talking about speaking engagements and presentations before this all started. You're never going to get a speaking engagement if your shoes aren't ready, if your dress isn't ready, if your PowerPoint's not ready to go.
Right.
You have to be ready for all opportunities.
Yeah. In the best ways that you can be, right? And if you're still trying to figure that all out, have the basics in place and keep building on it as you go along. And I think you've laid out and painted a very clear picture here of what people can do to move towards that, both by your own example and the kinds of things that you and your company can do to help people with that. Donna, this has been tremendous. I'm just so excited about having met you and learning more about what you do. And I encourage everyone to check out the show notes and all the links and go to Donna's website and take her assessment and figure out what your brand is or get further clarity on your brand, because that is really going to propel you far more in your career and work on optimizing that LinkedIn profile. So Donna, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Donna Serdula. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 244. While there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. And if you're feeling it, please Help me to inspire more people to grow their careers by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button right there. Leave an honest rating and brief review. I have provided step-by-step instructions to make it easy for you and to help the visibility of the podcast. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or you can order it through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I would love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.